There are a few common mistakes I see when it comes to planning and executing for your investor day, and in particular, thinking about your investor day presentation. Number one mistake I see is a lot of times IROs think they already know what their audience wants. A gap here could be if you haven't conducted a perception study, you don't have an objective idea of what your analysts, investors are really looking for. And if you don't do that, right, you're not sharing information that your audience really cares for. So sometimes I think we overestimate ourselves as to we know everything about the audience, which may not be the case. Number two would be not thinking about the headlines you want to influence in the media right at the beginning of your investor day planning itself, right? So if you want the headlines to be your company's strategy is clear or 2025 vision sold, you need to keep that in mind as you figure out the main messaging of your company. If that North Star is not clear, the entire story structure is going to fall apart. Number three would be a lot of times companies just focus on speakers versus focusing on topics, right? So your agenda shouldn't be influenced by speakers as much as it should be influenced by what your audience wants to hear. What is your North Star? What is the main message you want to get out? Accordingly, figure out your story structure, then think about your speakers. For example, right, a lot of times companies just have segment leaders presenting, but sometimes analysts might want to learn more about a certain capability, in which case, instead of a business leader, it might be useful to have a capabilities expert, right, talk about that capability. Number four is not paying attention to visual storytelling, right? Let's say you got the audience right, the messaging right, the story right. You have to package all this in a visual way so that you are getting your message across in a compelling, visual, engaging way to your audience. And number five to me would be spending too much time on just the presentation part and not allowing enough time for your management team to practice the presentation, not focusing on delivery. I think delivery is super important. Last 2 weeks before the investor day, you should shift focus on practicing slides, practicing delivery, and that would pay you off big time. So just to recap, those 5 things would be: number one, assuming that you know everything about your audience's needs. Number two would be not influencing the headlines or not thinking about the headlines. You want to influence at the beginning itself. Number three, focusing too much on a speaker-driven agenda versus an agenda that's driven by the needs of your audience. Number four would be not focusing on visual storytelling. And number five would be spending too much time on design and perfecting your slides versus focusing on delivery.